So, here we are, two therapists, two believers, two friends from two different backgrounds and two different upbringings, but one magnificent and holy God. We will spend time trying to connect the dots between mental health, Christianity, culture, and more. Join us for interesting discussions and even possible disagreements. Connect the dots. Two counselors, one God. Welcome back, people, to Connecting the Dots. Refocus now with Sarah and Lee. Today we're going to be doing things a bit different because we would like to announce that there will be times on Refocus Now where we actually speak to an expert about a particular thing. And today, the expert that we're going to be hearing from is none other than our own Sarah. So, give it up, folks, for Sarah. Sarah, would you like to greet the people?
Hello, it's very nice to be with you all today, and I am very excited for the topic today. I can't wait to get started.
That's right. And speaking of topic, today we are going to be talking about treatment modalities. Now, I know we've kind of been like slow walking in what it means to be a Christian who seeks information about mental wellness and counseling and the topics of therapy and all of those things. But today we're going to begin to get into a bit more of the details on the clinical side, which is a good thing. You know, we're supposed to be informed as children of God. So we're going to talk about treatment modalities. Now, before we get into that, what is a treatment modality, Sarah?
Yeah, so that's a great question to start off with. And to make it more simple and relatable, maybe I just was thinking when you go to the doctor, right? Let's say you have some type of respiratory thing going on or whatever, and they decide, okay, this is what specifically it is that you have. And then they have a specific modality often that they're going to offer to treat that issue that you're having. Some people decide to stay at home and they're going to use homeopathic medicine to treat. That would be a modality. Homeopathic medicine would be a modality to treat whatever it is that you're struggling with. People choose different doctors based off of the different types of treatment modalities that they offer. So some doctors are more focused on natural treatment. Other doctors are not as focused on that. So all that to say, in counseling, very similar. There are different types of treatment modalities or different ways of treating whatever it is that you are coming to counseling with and saying, I'm struggling with this, I need help. So depending on who you meet with will depend upon the type of treatment that is offered to you.
Okay, so a treatment modality doesn't necessarily have to be limited to counseling, but it's basically a way for a practitioner to address the specific needs of the person that's coming to see them using certain techniques.
Yes. Yeah,
Got
that's a
it.
great way of putting it.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Mm. So, what are some of the different types of treatment modalities in counseling?
Yeah, so not to get into too much details, but just one preface is that there are different counseling theories, and based
Hmm.
on what theory a counselor is using, theory basically think hypothesis, like what their assumption is about the world or about people, etc. Based on what theory they hold to informs what treatment modality they might use. For
Right.
instance, if somebody is into cognitive theory, it's all about how what we think in our mind impacts our life, how we relate, how we feel, etc. Right? What we
Right.
believe, how that impacts us. So, under that category of theory or cognitive treatment modalities, there's lots of different treatment modalities that somebody would use depending upon what somebody's presenting with. So, for instance, let's say somebody has a history of trauma, and maybe they really struggle also with mood disturbance. Somebody might use dialectical behavioral therapy, which is what we're talking about today. Let's say somebody really struggles with anxiety or depression, they just may use standard cognitive behavioral therapy. So there's these umbrellas, if we think of it, of
Mhm.
theory, and underneath these umbrellas are different types of treatment modalities based off of that theory. So another theory would be behavior theory. And so there are specific treatment modalities that focus more on behavior. Okay. And we also want to think always about culture as well, right? So I would say CBT is very much more like a Western, European approach to therapy, whereas there's other therapies like narrative therapy where people are sharing their story, or maybe even art therapy. Not to say that those aren't used in Western or European locations, but that may be more appropriate for other culture groups. So all of those things are things that should be taken into consideration when we consider, okay, what type of treatment modality is going to be the best for the person that is meeting with me, which me even saying that means that I'm an integrationist and I'm not somebody who picks like one type of treatment modalities based on one theory. I consider lots of different theories, and I'm integrating lots of different treatment modalities in my approach based on who's meeting with me and what they're presenting with.
Right. So when you said something before, and I'm going to say for the people who may not have caught that, when she said CBT, she was referring to cognitive behavioral therapy, the thing that she referenced before. And for those who don't understand, um, what Sarah basically said was, in treatment modalities of counseling, there are several schools of thought. And look at those schools of thoughts like umbrella. For instance, like psychoanalytic has to do with, that's an umbrella that deals with the way in which we think. Psychodynamic deals with our unconscious thinking. Then she talked about behavioral. That's another one that works on how our behaviors are. And then she spoke about cognitive, which deals with overall helping to change the way we think. She leaned a little bit into the humanistic, which deals with achieving your greatness or your personal goals. And then she ended on a different umbrella, which was the integrative, which uses pieces from the other umbrellas to come up with an overall covering or approach to help the individual that's coming to you. So, just like an artist has various tools to pull from, the therapist has many different theoretical frameworks to pull from in order to help an individual if they are an integrative therapist. That means if they pull from those other umbrellas or toolboxes, if you will. If not, you may
Yeah.
get someone who specifically focuses on one type of treatment modality. So if someone is psychoanalytic, that's typically the people when we talk about Freud and things like that, they're just going to help analyze the way you think. They're not going to ask you as many questions. Well, they're not going to give you as much feedback. They're going to ask you a number of questions so that you can see where you are. So all of this is important. Why, Sarah? Why is
Well,
all of this?
and yeah, and before I even go into that, something I do want to add is that there could be a tool, a treatment modality tool that could be used by different uh, theories in counseling. So the same tool could be used in different umbrellas, as we described. Just it would be potentially used differently, or the focus behind it might be a little different based on what the treatment modality is. And that's important for me to say because even as you mentioned, like humanistic theory, for instance, I, as a Christian, wouldn't be in agreement with most of humanistic theory in regards to the roots of it, but there may be some tools that were developed by people who uh, practice that theory in counseling that are effective that I want to use as a Christian to help people experience greater freedom in their life. Am I making sense?
Yeah, yeah. What you're saying is not everything is for everyone, and why we do what we do is often just as important as what we're doing. For instance, you spoke about how different people could use the same tools. So it's almost like how a carpenter versus a a carpenter versus who are those doctors that work on like your bones, like osteoporosis doctors. One of my friends had a hip replacement, right? They used a mallet on her hip, the same type of mallet that a
What it's
carpenter
gonna
would
see.
use,
Yeah.
but they're using it in very different ways for very different reasons.
Yeah.
So again, this is not a matter of good versus evil as in the tool. What
Yes.
Sarah highlighted is sometimes is it godly versus ungodly, and the origin or the overall purpose of that particular umbrella. So she
Okay.
mentioned humanistic. Really quick, did you want to tell them or did you want me to tell them why a humanistic approach may not be the best approach
You can tell
as
them.
a Christian? I think it's in the name, but
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
can tell them.
You want me to tell them?
I can, it's focused on you. It's all about you. It is what we see when we turn on like a lot of these self-help, like and even mindfulness or performance type of apps or on social media. It's the thing that a lot of Christians tend to mislabel as therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They think that it centers around them, but
Yeah.
that's not what all therapy is, i.e., out of, I think I named 6 or 7 different treatment modalities, and only one of them was humanistic. So only
Yeah.
one centers around the human, but they all involve the human. And
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that everything that is involved in humanistic, the treatment modalities or theory, isn't of itself bad,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So,
Yeah. And I would add that there are treatment modalities that I would never use, such as psychedelic therapy, where people are, popping LSD maybe during a session or something, and that's part of the treatment approach. That is not a treatment approach that I would ever use, right? So it's not like, oh, all tools are fine, depending on how you use them either. There
right.
are some tools that we're like, no, no, we're not going to use those tools.
Right. Right. That is a
Mhm.
another good point. So
Mhm.
again, there is a level of fluidity that you have to approach this with, and openness. If you
And
find
wisdom.
yourself if you find yourself struggling with like rigidity, like no, it's either all good or all evil, that's just not how life operates
Right.
or anything operates, for real, for
Right.
real. So
Yep.
with that having been said, you said we're going to talk about DBT. What is
Yes.
DBT?
Yeah, so DBT is dialectical behavioral therapy. It was developed by Marsha Linehan for a specific diagnosis in the past. We're not going to get into that. Nowadays, it's used for many different types of mental health struggles because it's found to be very helpful and useful for people in their lives. And part of that, part of the reason why I would say is because it is a very skills-based approach, helping people develop specific skills in their life so that they can really be more emotionally and mentally stable and have more effective relationships in their life. So would you like me to get into the specifics now, some of the specifics of DBT?
Yes, please. Go
Okay.
ahead, girl. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So, but first, I'll say that the DBT skills that we are going to be having on our app are um, are based in biblical foundations. So basically, I created content for DBT with that has biblical foundation. So when I say that, what I mean is that um, the heart of DBT as it relates to like the original DBT that was created is very humanistic, right? So it's very focused on you and this idea that we are enough and like taking resources from ourselves to be enough and like feel good about ourselves, all that kind of stuff, right? That's a piece of it. And there's other pieces that I won't get into, but I wanted to transform the foundation of DBT to having biblical foundations in which it's okay and safe to be able to say, I'm not enough on my own, that it's with God that I'm able to be the most whole and the most free person that I can be. So, just as a one, for instance, um, there's what I'm calling mindset skills on the app, which is like our focus. Okay. These are called how skills in DBT, which we won't get into that. But essentially, I've created a mindset skill of living loved. Okay. Living loved and no condemnation. Those are two mindset skills that are on the app where the focus is if I believe that I am loved instead of believing that I'm enough, right? And that I can depend on myself for all things. If I believe that I'm loved by the King of the universe, if I believe that there is no condemnation for me, that is going to free me to be able to practice all of these skills, because that's what the how skills are about, is being able to practice all of these skills with a specific focus. So I'm wanting people to practice these skills with the focus of that I am loved by the creator of the universe because of what Christ did for me. There is no condemnation for me. And so I can practice these skills. I can fail at practicing them. And it's okay because God's got me, essentially. And so the skill categories that people will be practicing are very much the same as in DBT. And they focus on emotion regulation. So when my emotions are very dysregulated, maybe I'm at an 8 to 10 intensity of emotional experience, whether it's frustration, anger, sadness, anxiety, fear. There's skills for me to learn that are going to help me to be able to calm my nervous system. I always take a deep breath when I talk about this, so that I can be able to actually think more clearly, and to be able to make better decisions, because the reality is that when we're dysregulated, we don't tend to make good decisions, right? So that's one category of skills. Another category of skills is about emotion processing. So this is when I'm no longer so dysregulated that I can't think clearly. Now I can actually do the work of thinking about, there's this repetitive pattern of emotion in my life. What might I be believing that's producing this repetitive pattern of emotion? And like, how can I start believing truth in a way that sets me free from going to those places of dysregulation, for instance? That's emotion processing. And then another category is interpersonal effectiveness. So this is about how I relate in relationships. Oftentimes, when we tend to get emotionally dysregulated or we're very sensitive emotionally, it doesn't really bode well in our relationships. Either we're completely avoiding conflict or anything that could trigger emotions in relationships, or we're constantly in conflict in relationships. And so the relationship skills category is all about, okay, how can I do relationships well? How can I do conflict in relationships well? How can I ask for what I want or need? How can I set boundaries in relationships, etc.? So that's another category. And then the final one would be called mindfulness in DBT. It could also be called focused attention. And essentially what this category is about is that when we're able to live in the present moment in life, like be fully present in the here and now, that's really when we're going to be most whole and healthy. And I think the Bible clearly demonstrates that in specific texts, like when God is telling us, don't be anxious about tomorrow, right? Like he wants us to be able to live in the present moment. And it makes sense because if we're not living in the present moment, how are we going to be listening to the Holy Spirit and walking in the Spirit, right? So this is what these categories and of the app is about.
Listen, scriptures were coming to mind as you were talking about the categories. So the focused attention, be still and know that I am God. You know? So many things were coming up, so many scriptures were coming to mind. And I think that it's important for us to look at things from a biblical perspective. And for those who may be struggling, this is not the same as if someone is trying to put just a Christian spin on something that is inherently evil and worldly. No, this is looking at the actual components and identifying the things that are useful for anyone, that are universal and could even be godly, but an individual took those things and made them focus on humans. So if anything, this is an attempt to right it, what was used in an improper way, to focus on the creation and not the creator. What Sarah is doing is saying, let's put the focus on the creator so that he can help the creation. So it's not saying that you're just not enough, so just suck it up. It's saying, no, in Christ, God says, I'm his beloved. And that is enough. It's not making it focused on anything on this earth, but the God that created the universe, the most high God, is the one that we are grounding ourselves in the moment. And that truth is greater than any earthly truth. Even if you do have enough skills, even if you feel like, hey, my skills are enough, baby, none of our skills are greater than God's skills. So if I can be grounded in that, it centers me. In short, it is teaching us how to abide when I hear that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, really quick, how is that different? Excuse me, though. How is that different? Wow. Sip of water. Yeah. How is that different? I can't get out the word different. Okay, I'm back. How is that different than like cognitive behavioral therapy? Because it seemed very similar.
Yeah, so cognitive behavioral therapy is actually the umbrella that DBT is
Ah,
under.
thank you. That's right.
So DBT would be called a treatment modality that's based on cognitive behavioral
That's
therapy
right.
roots. So yes, that means I
Right.
explained it well. If you were like, how is that not CBT? It is very CBT like.
Yeah. I wanted to ask that question because when I said the definition earlier, that could be a question that people would have. Well, then how is this different? It's a part of it, right? So as it pertains, you spoke about the biblical foundations, right? Did you want to speak a little bit more to the biblical foundations? Or you felt
Yeah,
like you kind of covered it?
no, I think I covered it. Yeah.
All right. So
Mhm.
as we're beginning to wrap up, because this is just an introduction, I'm excited. I hope that whoever is watching this, whoever is listening to this, we hope that you are excited to be taught how to use these tools, this particular modality, to basically abide in God and rest in his strength,
Mhm.
and know that in our weakness his strength is made perfect. And I want to know, is there anything else that you would want to say to the people about DBT and some of the exercises that we're going to have?
Sure, sure. Yeah. I think something I would like to say is that in today's age, people are often hopping from content to content to content.
Mm,
So they listen to something once, move on. Sometimes people don't even finish like whatever they were listening to because they got bored and they move on. Okay. That's the reality. We're very distractible, and our brains have actually been trained to be distractible with social media and all that kind of stuff. So, something that's very important is that if you want to work on these areas in your life, it's going to be important that you listen to the audios multiple times until you've mastered that skill. So, since it's skill based, you're wanting to learn a skill. And who goes and does a skill, practices a skill one time, and they're like, got it, generally doesn't happen, right? So, we want you, if you're going to be engaging in this, to be practicing the skills multiple times until you master it. So even if you do one skill every day for like 2 weeks, a month, the longer the better, because the more we practice, the more something becomes integrated into our being. And we're wanting these skills are to help you develop a lifestyle that is
mm,
transformative, that helps you live more free. and more at peace, really. So that's something I think that's really important to say.
Yeah, I do think that we've consistently, I think people say you become what you consistently practice. So whether you realize it or not, you have patterns. Um there there's a song by Jonathan McReynolds called Cycles. And he says, see, the devil, he learns from your mistakes, even when you don't. And he says there are patterns that we have as humans that we continuously repeat. And what Sarah is saying is let's be deliberate and pouring in to ourselves to become, number one, better stewards over our mind health and just walk closer to God in a way that'll develop some new behaviors and even new mindsets. That's how we talked before about how neural pathways are developed and things like that. So that's cool.
Mhm.
And again, the reason why I gasped when you said we have to do the work is because that's countercultural. That is a very countercultural message where in a day and age where we have everything at our fingertips and we have set with information and we did a whole deep dive for a whole day on a topic, we can come off as if we are an expert. That is what we call the Dunning-Kruger effect. When we know just enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be thorough and efficient, and not nearly enough as we may think. So Sarah's trying to protect us from being arrogantly ignorant, and by teaching us skills that we have to repetitively practice in order to pour into ourselves and get better mind health and really learn about the word and who God created us to be. So, with that having been said, you want to say anything else to the people, Sarah, before we go?
I do have one more thing. If you are listening and you are a therapist, I just want to say that I think that this category on our app is a great tool for you to offer to your clients. I know for me as a therapist, I don't really want to be training people in skills in counseling sessions. I want to be doing more deeper work, and
Mm,
I want them to be practicing skills outside of sessions. DBT is very much like a group skill based approach, which obviously we're not offering groups on our app, but people can still learn skills, right, by listening to the audios. And so this is a great opportunity for therapists, I would say, to recommend, okay, go download this app and be practicing these skills. It would be important for you to listen to them as well so that you know what it is that they're listening to, right, and what it is that they're learning, so that then you can reference those skills that they're practicing in your sessions and like solidify whatever progress or growth they're making with that, as opposed to having to do all of this teaching and take up a lot of time in your sessions to teach.
right. And not just therapists, uh, pastors, church staff who are tired and you notice that they're the thinking of some of the people that you are laboring in the Lord with, even beside or the individuals that you are serving, that you may think need some additional supports, this is a godly tool that you could recommend for others that you know, or even yourself. So, anyone involved in ministry, sometimes we're in areas where people can't even get to counseling. And again, this is not therapy. This is a tool, a therapeutic tool that people can use that can be helpful and beneficial. So, whether you're a therapist or whether you're just a regular person, listen, I think it's useful. So,
Amen.
So, folks, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Please make sure you are taking care of yourself and others. And we'll see you next time. With that having been said, grace and peace.
Grace and peace.
For more information, click the link in the bio and even click the link so that you can find out about our blog, our website, and to get on our mailing list. Grace and peace.